Hi everyone, it's Linnea here, and today I want to talk about how people are saying that Wordle seems to be getting harder. And I think that's actually incorrect. Well, it's kind of true because, and by the way, I'm talking about the daily Wordle, which I don't record because I don't want to spoil the Wordle because I find it fun when people struggle with it. So when it comes to the daily puzzle, there's many factors that go into what the word will actually be. And in fact, actually, there's a series of words that have been predetermined well before, well before uh, New York Times obtained it. And in fact, there was actually a series of words that were already made before New York Times obtained it. And the one thing is that when New York Times uh, received the list, they actually changed it so that oh shit. Um oh, okay. They actually changed it so that it would be easier for players overall because the words coming up were going to be harder. And knowing this information means a few things. That one, we're on the 200th, well, actually, we're well past the 200th word. And that means that over 200 words are now off the table as a possibility. At least right now, anyways. We have yet to see a daily word repeat. And we probably won't see one repeat for a while. Which means that every time that a word is now off the table, it increases the difficulty that much more. Because people have to start thinking about words that are not of common use. For example, people are saying that aroma, for example, is harder to get, or even agora is harder to get because they're not obscure. And people even commented about cynic. Cynic is actually, I don't think, that hard to distinguish. And the reason for this is because cynic is often used in daily language. The problem is the words that people choose. You see, people automatically will go for words like leech or even beach. In fact, I do this as well. Or even crane. And the most common vowels that are used are A and E. A and E are two letters that are commonly used, especially in five-letter words. So people will automatically do something like drain, even, and they will forget that U and Y are also valid vowels. Now, Y is rarely used, but U is often used. So when you have words like cynic, it's going to take a while to get there, depending on the words that you started out with. If you're lucky, you might have started with could. And this will tell you a few things. It'll tell you that there's a C in the first position, and you'll also know, but it'll also eliminate some of the words. So it'll automatically tell you that there is no O or U, which means that it has to be either A, E, or I, or even Y. Now, as you consider this information, you need to understand, okay, what is more likely to be used? Is it Y? Is it A? Is it E? And obviously, if you have words like could, and you automatically eliminate O, okay, so there's no O, U, or L, or D. So naturally, and there is a C, so there's probably an A there. So what words are most likely going to be used and also have an A in them? Okay, let's try track. Oh, so now we know that there is a C, an R, an A. And we also know that the letter A has to be in the center. Now, part of Wordle is recognizing word patterns. And this really helps if you have a lot of knowledge of the English language in general. We also know it's also very important to use logic. So we already know that C cannot be in the first position or the fourth position. And that quickly narrows down the possibilities. Now, it could start with R, but the thing is, actually, it could just, well, actually, no, it can't be that. So, what you need to do is start eliminating possibilities. R could be first, but it actually is more likely to be not first. Trying to think, actually, right now, if C is not in the beginning, and C is not in the fourth position, then it's probably in the second position. Scarf. Ooh, and now we know that it's scare. Oh, now we know that it's scary. And using logic, even if I didn't know the word scary, I can automatically start eliminating possibilities and just go through the list. The most important thing is to not rush Wordle. If you are able to use logic and use the information that is given, then it's not actually going to be harder or easier, it's just going to be a game of logic and vocabulary. Now the thing about Wordle is that there's a set amount of words that is possible. There are words that are unlikely to be the choice because either it's too difficult, too obscure, or not used at all. For example, ado is not a word that is probably going to be used. However, it can give you a lot of information because we now eliminate two vowels and now we know two other vowels that are in the word. And so knowing this, that means that it's probably only going to be those vowels because the more information that we know, the more we can use word patterns to distinguish, oh, okay, so this is more likely to be the case. For example, this is probably going to be SHA, which means that okay. See, sometimes there's too many possibilities. Sometimes you run into the situation of too many possibilities. And honestly, that kind of sucks because obviously you only have so many turns. So instead of going that approach, you can also already think of a word that would not only tell you the vowel, but also tell you some consonants, because consonants are just as important as vowels. For example, if you start with shark, okay, now we know that there's a K and there's no. Oh, wait, we know that K comes at the end, which means that there's probably going to be a CK because of word patterns. And so maybe something like, actually, there's no R. Let me think. CK. I don't think that's going to be the word. So let me think. Gotta think a little bit. Ooh, now we know a lot more information. We know, and now we have the word. And what I did is I simply used logic. You need to use logic a lot of the times because you don't have an infinite amount of tries, which means that you need to use the information that is available and also the information that is not available, which is the word patterns. See, in the English language, especially with 5 letters, there's a certain pattern that is consistent. For example, if there's only one vowel in a word, then it probably is going to repeat. If it's A and O, and those are the only letters, then there's a good chance that something is going to repeat. U is often assisted by E or O. U is often associated or assisted with another letter, another vowel, I should say. Although it's not always the case. For example, now you can already eliminate Q immediately if there is no U, because there's only a few words that have no U following Q, and most of them are not 5 letters. For example, QA is a word that is a word, but obviously it's not 5 letters, and it's one of the few that doesn't require a U with it. So, knowing this information, Wordle can become a lot easier. And so hopefully this information can help you with getting Wordle to be a little bit, and that's not even a word, a little bit easier. Actually, that's not possible. So what we can do is, okay. So we know that H is actually the end. Oh, so that means that H is at the end? Okay. And look, you're not always going to get it, and that's perfectly fine. But using word patterns, using more thinking than relying on your vocabulary is honestly going to help a lot. And I'm not trying to say that everyone is stupid. What I'm trying to say is that sometimes people don't use the information that is being given to them by the game, and because of that, it is harder because the possibilities of words that it could be is kind of infinite because there's a lot of 5-letter words, many of which probably will never be used. And especially the more we go on, it's gonna get harder and harder if you are only relying on your vocabulary. But if you can use clues in within the word, then you can get a lot of information. Now, another thing that you can sometimes do is kind of ignore the information that is there. For example, right now, I can't really think of any word that ends with an H and has an S. So you know what? I'm actually going to ignore that, and we're just gonna we're gonna try something to get some more information. So I'm just going to ignore the fact that we know that. Okay, so now that we know that it has an S and a C and an H, which means, oh wait, no, there's no T. Which means that it has to have a Y in it. That tells us a lot of information. It has to have a Y in it. And it can't start with an S. Psych. And there we go. See, sometimes you just need a little bit more information to get there. And that's okay. That's why you have 6 tries. Sometimes you're just never going to get enough information. But the more you can think, the more you can really think about what is being given to you, the easier it will become. And honestly, I haven't seen, to me, Wordle hasn't become easier or harder. Because it's always just been a game of logic to me. And whenever you deal with logic, it's really about the strategies. See, I think people are approaching Wordle as a game of words, and only a game of words. But they're not really using the clues that are being given to them. Now, it is granted that the first and second words that you use is the most important words. Because you need to make sure that you're getting the most out of your information. So starting with words that have a lot of vowels, or at least vary in the selection and are commonly used, is the best approach. That's why people are saying that crane is a good option, or but honestly, crane isn't really that good of an option. Because it doesn't really give you a whole lot of information right off the bat. It does give you some information, but it only tells you that there's no E or E. It would only tell you that there's no A and E. But there could still be a lot of possibilities, and you will often get a completely blacked out word, which means that none of the letters are in the word. Now that's not a problem, but it can make it harder for you to think of other words. Because now you're like, okay, that was a complete wasted turn. But what you need to do is you need to not dwell on a blacked out word. You need to use that information. Okay, so there's no A, there's no E. Okay, so what are my options now? Well, it probably could have an O and a U. So let's just eliminate those possibilities. If there's an O and U, okay, great. If not, there has to be a Y, probably, or an I. And that begins to narrow down the possibilities of words. So that's a little bit of information of how to play Wordle. Really play it. And I hope that this helped a little bit. At the end of the day, it's a game of logic and it's a game of vocabulary. It's kind of just like any crossword puzzle or Sudoku or something like that. It really is a lot of logic and a lot of vocabulary. If English is your second language, it's probably going to be harder because there's a lot of information that you kind of just have to know. about the English language. And maybe as an English major, I do have a slight advantage over someone who's like a STEM major that doesn't necessarily have an extensive vocabulary. I'm trying to not sound egotistical, but it is definitely a leg up if you already have a library of information. Because you can start to detect word patterns and know what is more likely to be used than not. For example, wait. Is this I don't know if I'm spoiling. Some people are surprised. I'll say this. Some people are surprised at the fact that I can get a word in the second try. And honestly, it's a lot of luck because the only way that I can really get a word in the second try is if the first word is successful. I need to know because that's why that sometimes doing something like a do is actually not a good idea because it'll only tell you the vowels if those are the vowels at all. Sometimes you also have to consider what consonants are most likely to be used. And I'll tell you right now. S, T, P, L, B, C, N or N, and K are more likely than not going to be used. W, Z, X, V, those letters, they're less likely but not impossible. And that's what you have to remember. That even if a letter is not used frequently, it doesn't mean that it's impossible. That's why I feel like people think that cynic was hard to understand or hard to get. Because people were not thinking of letters of words with a Y in it. Let's be honest. No one was really thinking about, oh, it has a Y in it. Or, oh, it has an I in it. Maybe some people learned, or some people also don't anticipate the repeated letter. But if you think about it, it is more likely that a letter is going to repeat than not, especially as we go along. Because Wordle is trying to get harder. It is trying to be harder. Like, it doesn't want to be easy mode all the time. So, knowing that information, you have to anticipate the repeated letter. And you also have to know when to try it out. Because the repeated letter is a big risk. Because you end up probably going to waste a turn. You have to waste a turn in order to know if there's a repeated letter. So, and the letters that are more likely to repeat are A, L, and O. Those are the letters that are probably going to repeat. It's not always going to be those ones, but those are more likely. Also E. I would also include E, because you can have something like leech. You have something like leech, and then the letter would repeat. Now, I would never recommend you starting a word with a repeated letter, because it's not going to give you a whole lot of information, and you also might just be wrong. So, but if you are trying to get like the first and second try, think about if the word you start with, let's say you start with I'm trying not to like leak it. Let's say you start with more. And immediately you understand, okay, there's a U but no O. If there's a U and there's no O, then it's less likely, actually, that the letters are going to repeat. Because think of the words that have U in it. Until. You have until. You have something like undo. Or, actually, that's not even a word. That's not even one. Like round. Like, if it has a U in it, there's probably not going to be a repeated letter. If it has a Y in it, there's probably going to be a repeated consonant. If it has an A in it, or an E, or an O, then the letters are more likely to repeat, but it's not guaranteed. If it has an S in it, then there's a possibility of letters repeating. We could go on and on and on and on. But like I said, it's really just a game of logic and knowing what the information is trying to actually tell you. And positioning is a huge hint. It is very important to consider the position of the letters, and it's also important to try and get the correct position. So if you have yellow or orange or whatever, if you have words that are like colored that hint that it's there in the word but not in the right position, you should try to move the letter and try to get where the letter is in the word, because otherwise it's going to cost you extra turns. So if you can immediately gain more information by using the same letter but in a different position, and also eliminate other possibilities, then you have a better chance of being successful than not. So hopefully, I know this is a bit of a long video, but hopefully this helped you a little bit. And if you have any questions, feel free to comment them below. I'll do my best to explain or something. Good luck with Wordle.